Welcome each and everyone to the Brand Identity Design Business Podcast. My name is Jason. I'm your host, and I've been doing this podcast for almost a year. Started in Jan 2022. I have interviewed incredible people on my show. A lot of interesting entrepreneurs who have different takes about what they do, stuff like that. So the aim of the show is to educate more entrepreneurs as to some of the hardships we go through, troubles and challenges we go through. We want to resolve all those challenges. So I've been doing this series called As a Dark Side of Entrepreneurship. Nothing really dark, but we just want to share ideas, recommend strategies on how you can deal with these adversities while running your business. And I do this by interviewing high level business executives who are willing to share personal and professional experience with us. Now, if you're new to my podcast, I just want to say that my podcast is heard over 23 countries so far and ranks on Spotify at the top 30%. My aim by the end of this year is to get that number down from 30 to 20%. I think that's going to be phenomenal. Your help would really mean a lot. So just in case if you're listening to this episode, the pre-recorded version or the live version, feel free to share my podcast as much as possible on social media. It helps me to reach more and more people. So I want to also make a few announcements before we start this podcast episode for today. Is that my podcast is actually powered and backed up by my design business, which is IamJDesigns Co. So shout out to my business, because my business enables me to actually interview people, remove time from my business, make interesting content through my podcast. And this wouldn't have been possible if my design business is not looking after things. So shout out to my business for helping me out. Another announcement which I like to make, that we've been ranked. I think my podcast is ranking number 6 in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, according to Apple Podcasts. I recently was notified by Apple about this. And just in case if you are a podcaster and if you want to learn about podcast sponsorships, I would highly encourage you to buy the podcast sponsorship kit. You should be able to find it under the event notes or the show notes. If you're listening to the pre-recorded version, you should be able to find this, details mentioned. I want to quickly give a shout out to my sponsor. His name is Elliot K, who has been a guest on my show. Phenomenal episode which I did with him, and he has this speaking gigs which we sent out like an email alert every single day. And I really like it. I'm subscribed to it. He sends out a lot of details, not only just for UK, but globally. And I would highly encourage you guys to take advantage of it. I would not endorse anything which I don't follow myself. So here this sponsor shout out. And sponsorship does help us to reduce down some of the overall expenditure of running a podcast. So yeah, I'm going to play that recording now.
Do you want speaking opportunities delivered to your inbox daily? Do you want to cut out all that time searching for speaking opportunities so you can simply apply and spread your message globally? If you've answered yes to any of those questions, join the Gig Getters Alert service today, where we'll email you speaking opportunities, virtual or live, from across the world so you can apply, you can be seen, you can get paid to speak today. Join the Gig Getters Alert service today so we can support you to not only be a great speaker, but to speak your greatness and spread your message globally. Join us today.
You should be able to find the details to the Gig Getter Alert service under the show notes or the event notes. You should be able to find it. I would highly recommend you to just take advantage of it. It's not too expensive. It's around £9, 9 or £10 a month. But it's really worth it. So anyways, I know you guys are waiting for the most interesting aspect of today's show. We will be speaking about the impact of homestaging on real estate sales. I have never ever interviewed anybody who speaks about real estate, so I'm very excited. Shout out to Elliot K, the same sponsor who recommended Elaine Penhaul, my today's guest, to speak about this topic. I'm really excited. So thank you for joining us on this special episode. We will be exploring the impact of home staging If you're not familiar with this concept, we will be deep diving into this very soon on real estate sales with renowned home staging expert Elaine Penhaul. She's the founder and CEO of Lemon and Lime Interiors, a leading home staging company in the UK with over 15 years of experience in the industry. She has helped hundreds of homeowners and real estate agents transform their properties to irresistible and profitable assets. Now, something if you don't know about Elaine is that she's also a very talented mathematician, and she is also a sailor, which I will try to speak about or ask her questions about, during our conversation. She's also an author to a best-selling book called as Sell High, Sell Fast. If you go to lemon and lime interiors.co.uk, you should be able to find these details. So please applaud, please give us emojis, and please welcome Elaine Penhall to this virtual stage. Thank you so much, Elaine, for the opportunity to interview you and to learn more from you. I'm really, really excited to have you.
And I'm really excited to be here, Jason. Thank you so much for having me, and to Elliot for introducing us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Doesn't she sound amazing, guys? She has a lovely voice. I like the way how she says things. It's very interesting. So let's actually deep dive into our conversation. So, Elaine, the first thing which I want to start off, and just a personal question, not related to the questions which I sent you. I want to ask you, like, what is your fascination with mathematics, and what is this thing you have about sailing? Do you still do it? Tell me, like, it's a mixture of a lot of interesting things, and real estate is something completely different. So I know that you have been coaching a lot of sailors, doing a lot of interesting stuff. And why did you pivot away, and why did you decide to get into this line of business?
Wow, that could be the whole podcast before we even get into the questions, Jason. Um, so the mathematics is you have to be good at something, and at school I was told very, very early on that writing wasn't my thing. I had no imagination. I grew up in the days where you were sent to stand behind the blackboard if you couldn't do spelling, and I spent a lot of time behind the blackboard. But what I did find that I was good at was doing sums. So I focused on that. So I came out of university with a maths degree. I then started training as an actuary, which was very rare for a woman in those days. We're talking about early 80s. It wasn't a career that most women went into. I very rapidly realized that whilst I could do the sums, I really, really was bad at sitting still, especially staring at a computer screen all day, which weren't anywhere near as sophisticated as they are these days. And so, much to the huge horror of my then boss from where I was working, I announced that I was going to go and teach sailing in the emerging industry that was happening in the Mediterranean at that point, where there were companies, big holiday companies, what have now become big holiday companies, setting up sailing bases. And so I basically ran away to sea at that point. And after many years doing that, and I grew up on the coast in England, so I learned to sail quite young, and found that then people would pay me to go and teach them to sail, which was great fun. And that was exactly what I did for a few years, until eventually I gave in and came back to the UK and got I didn't even really get a proper job at that stage. I've had a lot of jobs, a lot of careers, and have finally settled, just as my friends are all starting to retire, into something that I absolutely love, which combines my kind of love of talking to different people with doing statistics and doing numbers.
Wow. Wow. That's really interesting. That is really interesting. Were you always fascinated about sailing from a very young age, or was that something which you, uh, you know, got interested, like maybe while after school or something? How did that happen? The whole thing.
I could see the sea from my bedroom. Just a tiny glimpse down the road, I could see the sea, and at weekends you could see all these little sailboats out bobbing around, and I thought, oh, that looks like fun. And I pestered my parents until they found somebody, a group that I could join to learn to sail. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I kind of got into it just because I grew up on the coast. My father is still horrified by the fact that I can sail, because he actually can't swim and is terrified of water. So the fact that I wanted to learn to sail when I was probably 13, 14, something like that, he was horrified by. But luckily, he was also willing just to kind of close his eyes and pretend it wasn't happening. And then you get into a sport, you find that you can do it, that you're good at it, and you get more and more opportunities, don't you? So that was what happened, basically. I now have a son who's a professional sailor and works with things like Sail GP and America's Cup. So if there's anybody listening that knows anything about professional sailing, then that's the world that he lives in. And I'm very proud of the fact that was because my kids all learned to sail from, a bit like learning to walk, really. It was just what we did.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So, let's actually deep dive into this conversation. I'm really surprised that people are not tuning in to listen to this. But if people who are missing out on this, I'm telling you, we're going to have a phenomenal session, because I have a lot of interesting questions about home staging, something you probably would not have heard of. So those two individuals who I see live, my good friend Leslie and Wade, thank you. I love you both to death. Thank you so much for being so supportive, and I appreciate you guys being here. So my first question, let's simplify things. Let's break this down. I have never heard about property staging. For me, it's like a new concept altogether. Maybe we don't use the same term. Okay, so what is property staging, and what do you think are some of the key benefits of using this technique to sell a property? Help me understand this concept.
Okay, I think property staging, or home staging as it's more commonly known certainly in the States, has been around for quite a long time. It started mostly, I think, as something that US homeowners were encouraged to do from kind of mid-70s onwards. It's taken a very, very, very long time to become a thing in the UK and in Europe. And there are all kinds of reasons associated with how the real estate industry works in the different countries that are the problem with that. Basically, home staging is the act of preparing a property to achieve the best sale, to achieve the best possible price in the shortest possible time. And it has been very normal, certainly in the UK and a lot of Europe, I think was previously in most parts of the world, for people just to decide, okay, I think I want to sell my home, to phone a real estate agent and to almost get the property on the market, get the house on the market the same day or within a few days. And what people have now begun to realize, I think, worldwide, and is certainly being driven by the huge success of proper, what we would regard as really phenomenal property marketing in the States, is that actually, if you spend a bit of time tidying up, dealing with dated decor, even moving in furniture and accessories that acknowledge current trends, so that you're making a house really look like something that somebody wants to live in, that a new family want to buy, then it makes a huge difference to the price that you can achieve for the house. And it's amazing, really, isn't it? Because if you look at the marketing budgets that are applied to every other product that's sold, so cars, for example, would be a good example. They're a fraction of the cost of of a house, and yet they have huge marketing budgets applied to them. And yet in a property sale, very often homeowners aren't even encouraged by a real estate agent to tidy up, do cleaning, to paint the walls that they painted back in the 70s, to paint them with, colours that acknowledge a current trend. And that's become more and more of a problem in an age where people buy from, where they're looking on a website to start with, they're looking at property photos on portals to begin with, and also they're looking at things like Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media channels for what they want to buy next. And houses are being traded like that in exactly the same way that every other product is. So I think it's really important that people are offered the opportunity and understand how to maximize their home sale. And part of that is definitely about home staging.
Lovely, lovely. So it's preparing your property so that it can be sold at the best possible price. And staging means that you're basically doing like a facelift. Okay, giving the property a facelift so that it's more appealing to the audience you're trying to sell it to. So I get it. I understand it. I think people here, at least geographically where I am, I don't think we do that a lot. But I think I understand what you mean. So make it more enticing, interesting, so that you get the best possible value from it, right?
Exactly,
Awesome.
exactly. So
Awesome.
that you're creating a market where you perhaps have more than one person who falls in love with it and wants to buy it.
Lovely, lovely. I appreciate you sharing that. That was very simple explanation. I get it. Okay, my question number 2 is about the concept of home. How important is the concept of home in the property staging process, and how can it be effectively conveyed to a potential buyer? Because at the end of the day, okay, we all want to feel the property which you're trying to acquire, does have this connection, does have this home like feeling. So would you mind elaborating on that? What are your thoughts on this, the concept of just home?
I think when I read this question, when you sent these over to me, I thought that's a really interesting question, because for all of us, if you say the word home, it evokes a feeling. Everybody feels something about their home. Most people feel something about their home, and buying and selling something, anything, is can be quite an impersonal transaction. And it's about so the home in home staging is about putting the emotional bit back into the purchase of your new place, if you like, where you're going to live for the next few years. And the home staging is essentially wanting to evoke that emotion in a potential buyer from the minute they set foot across the doorstep. So the minute they arrive at the house that they're having a look at to see if it's somewhere they can live, immediately you want them to, if you're selling it to them, if they're a potential buyer, you want them to feel as though they're at home. And so the home staging is really it requires really expert understanding of the difference between, if you ask a real estate agent, especially, kind of UK, Europe at the moment, if you say to them, what is home staging? They'll tell you it's about decluttering, it's about painting neutral, it's about putting in things that everybody's going to like. It's more than that. It's about helping people understand that this place that they're now looking at, this house that they're now looking at, has the potential to be the new home where they're going to be happy, where they're going to be able to entertain their friends, where they're going to be able to bring up their children, where they're going to be able to host parties, for example, or where they're going to be able to retreat at the end of a long, busy working day as a sanctuary. It's got to do all of those things for somebody that's walking in as a potential buyer. And how a home stager works with the house to evoke those emotions as somebody walks from room to room really is a very has to be very, very carefully thought through. And that's really where the home comes in. It's not about neutralizing it so that everybody can see themselves in there. It's about creating that feeling of this could be your home. You could really be happy here with the things that we put in and the things that we perhaps take out, or the colors that we use, or the furniture that we use, or all of those things. It's evoking this feeling that's important, because home is a feeling.
Absolutely. I agree with you. But, my counter question to you with what you said, Elaine, is that I am an individual. I have my own preference, taste, things I like, I dislike, right? Leslie is another friend. She might have her preferences. Karen is another friend. Wade is another friend. All these individuals whom you see live in the audience, all of them would have different preferences. So, how can you do home staging in a way that it appeals to a specific target market, like, let's say, a youngster, a young family, or maybe a retiree, or somebody who's just trying to buy a luxury home? Do you think staging is a process like, we kind of is it intended to serve like I have if you want to sell a property, you would want to sell it and get the best price. Would you really care who is buying it? Or does staging comes into a process wherein you modify things so that it appeals only to a selective group? I don't know. Do you get my question? Like, are you understanding what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things I pretty much wrote a whole chapter about this in my book, Jason, because you're exactly right. How do you know who's going to buy it? And I think it's like any product. If you think about it like marketing any product, not every manufacturer. So let's take car manufacturers for example. So every car manufacturer has, when they're producing a new model of car, they will create avatars. In other words, they will create a persona of who they think their perfect client is, who they think is going to buy this particular car with these particular features at this particular price. And a house is no different. And what we do, as home stagers, we work very closely with the real estate agent and indeed the homeowner, and look at the property and look at the location, look at the price point, look at the what might be around the property, the location in as much as, are there good schools close by? Are there great coffee shops? Is it a countryside home? Is it going to enable the children to have ponies, or is it a flat on the top floor of a block that's very close to theatres and great restaurants? Because each of those homes will be targeting a different buyer, a different avatar, a different persona, of somebody that's going to be able to afford to buy that property, somebody that's going to want to be in that location, somebody that for whom that property has the right number of rooms and the right combination of rooms. So if it's a family home, you can tell that by number of bedrooms, for example, and the space downstairs, the space that's open to them. Is it all open plan, or actually is there a room that's closed off, that's the kids' TV room, for example? Is there a home office? Has certainly become really, really important during kind of COVID times. What exactly is the house offering, and therefore who is the buyer likely to be? And once you understand who the buyer is likely to be, so exactly as you said, is it a young family? Is it somebody that's retiring, for example? You will then, and looking at the price point as well in combination with that, you will then be able to tell, you will be able to understand as a home stager, as a real estate agent, who the likely buyer is, and therefore what else they're looking at. Where do they shop? What are they looking at in social media? What do they watch on Netflix, for example? What are they being influenced by in other parts of their life? And once you've looked at all of that together, you go, okay, so the trends that they're following are likely to be X, Y, and Z. So sustainability, for example, is a huge trend at the moment, particularly for a younger population who are very, very, very concerned, rightly, about climate change. And they are more likely to be influenced by a sustainable interior design concept, if you like. So where the stager is going in and really thinking about the sustainability that home offers, and playing up those features and playing down the features that perhaps don't feed into that trend. And that's what a stager is doing. It's playing up the features that are going to sell the house to the target audience. We're not trying to sell every house to everybody. We're looking at who is going to be the buyer here, and then just creating that avatar, if you like, thinking about what else they're looking at and playing to that audience in the same way that any other marketing will play to a particular audience. You understand your audience, and then you're targeting the marketing towards them so that it really appeals to the maximum, the widest possible target audience, not the widest possible audience, but the widest possible target audience. Young families, retirees, professional couples, whatever that happens to be.
Interesting. This is very, very interesting because I think you guys are using a lot of strategic thinking in terms of
Yeah.
how to execute this. I like the fact that you mentioned about the avatar, because I never like, if I go to a real estate agent here, at least in Mumbai, they are not going to ask, or try to figure out if I fall under the avatar or the they are not going to do
Yeah.
all of that. They're like, you have the money, this is a space, would you like to buy it? So I like the fact that you guys are giving it like a huge thought, like, first of all, what the home brings, what kind of resources are accessible, or not resources, but what kind of accessible options are available, and who would be like an ideal candidate to take advantage of these resources. And based on that, you decide what kind of target audience you want to tap into. I think this is super, super smart. This is super smart.
Yeah.
I like the way how you're doing, going ahead with this. So my next question is actually is the role of technology, because I've been noticing that many people are getting accustomed to technology. They want a robot cleaning stuff. They want the lights to switch on by itself. So what role do you think technology plays in a modern home staging industry, and what tools and techniques are emerging to enhance the staging process because of technology?
I think that's a fascinating question. And when I was thinking about this and looking at what you had sent me prior to the podcast, I think this falls into two distinct areas. One is what's the role of technology that's outward facing, if you like. So what would a potential buyer or a real estate agent notice about the staging that actually goes on in the home? So it may be, and there's actually a huge increase at the moment in, particularly in the States, for virtual staging. And virtual staging is around taking either floor plans, so you can do virtual staging with a property that actually hasn't been built yet. So it still is on the architect's plans. It's still not you don't even have to have put a spade in the ground to create beautiful interiors from virtual staging, and that can be done from floor plans. And that's a really good use of technology in the staging industry, so that when a developer has kind of scoped the property, got the plans ready, got all funding in place, the thing that the developer wants to do is to actually get the sales as quickly as possible, preferably before they've had to spend a huge amount of money on building the property. And so creating beautiful interiors from virtually, so like CGIs, if you like, it's a similar process, but it combines interior design with CGI imagery, will really, really help those properties in particular start to get pre-sales, if you like, so sales before they've actually been built, and that's really useful for people that are putting a lot of funding into a house. So I think part of that is the outward facing. I think the other part of it, which is becoming quite an interesting space, it's a space that we've lived in right from the beginning, because, you know, with my kind of mathematical background, I'm also quite techie, and I really like the aspects of CRM systems, of accounts packages, of inventory tracking, all of which are relatively new to homestaging businesses. Homestaging businesses historically, wherever you are in the world, have largely been run by solopreneurs who do everything, you know, not everything, but a huge amount of stuff in their heads. They hold, you know, they can hold amazing amounts of inventory in their heads. They can hold all their projects in their heads. And my ambition for my business when I first started out was growth. And in order to do that, we used the technology. There hasn't really been anything existing in the home staging world that is tailored to our industry. So we've had to do an awful lot of tweaking existing systems, if you like, to fit what we do. And we've now pretty much got an end-to-end system, so that I can just go on. I can be anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter, and I can actually see what furniture we're putting into a project that we've got next week, for example. And that's a relatively new use in the home staging industry. We're definitely considered slightly odd, if you like. I mean, people have coaching and training about that stuff, but I'm still regarded as being a little bit odd, particularly because I'm so old. I'm not supposed to have those kind of thoughts about stuff.
This is lovely. This is really incredible, because I mean, as a designer, I have seen many people work on modeling, 3D modeling, and I think I get the idea. So I mean, if somebody can create like a 3-dimensional view of what possibly the property can look like, you know, prior to staging, prior even investing any sort of money, I think that would be very exciting for individuals, because homeowners now can possibly see before and after, and they can make a conscious choice, you know, whether it would be worth it to make such a substantial amount of investment. I think that's super cool. But you said there are 2 distinctive areas. So this was the outward facing. So what would be the other one?
No, so the outward facing is exactly what you've just described, the modeling and the CGI imagery, the virtual staging, and the inward facing is what I've just described. So in terms of using project management tools, of using asset management tracking, of using proper accounts packages. So that type of technology is very, very new to the staging industry. So people who are stagers, it's a very new thing, and that's something that we're doing lots of coaching about. And so, for example, you know, Jason, that I created what's in fact, and it's incredible given how long these staging's been going on in the States particularly, I created the first app in the world that evidences return on investment for staging. And that's something that we are very proud of. And still, still it's regarded as being something that, we probably don't need that, because there are so many stagers who are still doing things as very much as solopreneurs, and who are just kind of doing it on the back of as we would say in the UK, on the back of a fag packet. You know, in other words, they're kind of keeping notes and, you know, and not really creating something within their business that somebody else could pick up and run with.
Absolutely. Guys, if you're enjoying this conversation, please give us a heart emoji, so that I'm hoping everybody is liking what you're hearing, because we got some really more interesting questions which I'm going to ask. And just in case if you have not, please share this space. There's a share icon right at the bottom of your screen. Please help my guests to get more and more reach, so that we are passing this message to as many individuals as possible. I thank all the 5 listeners who have joined us. I really, really appreciate you sticking around. because I have some more questions. So I want to speak about the eco-conscious buyer, the sustainable buyer. So, what strategies would you use during a staging process to integrate this as a part of the design process? Maybe the house which is gonna go through staging is not very eco-friendly, and let's say that there is a possibility of making it eco-friendly. Like, how would you do this? Like, how would you transition and make all this happen?
Now that's an interesting framing of that question, actually, because can I pick that up in a minute? So the first thing that I would say about home staging and the whole kind of sustainability, eco-friendly thing is that obviously that whole conversation has become really important in every business over the last few years. And we've thought about it very hard, and we've now created a page on the website to talk about exactly this. Fundamentally, the process of staging is very eco-friendly. It's very sustainable, because the alternative to what we do. So we have furniture packages that we rent into a property. We rent them in while somebody needs it for to show the fantastic house that is on offer, and we rent all the furniture in as stages, and then we'll go and collect it, bring it back to the warehouse, and start again. So essentially, the act of renting furniture into a property that's going to be sold is a much more sustainable way of doing business than what was previously, and what still happens, in that some people who are creating show homes, for example, so the big developers will usually buy furniture. They're often buying relatively cheap furniture because they don't want to spend a huge amount of money on the show homes necessarily, unless it's very high end. So they're buying furniture, putting it into properties, and then at the end, they're either selling that furniture on to the person that's buying it, who may or may not actually want it, but it's just coming as part of the package. And then it gets thrown out. Whereas what we're doing is renting furniture in and then going back and collecting it afterwards. We, as a business ourselves, are very, very keen to buy high quality furniture in the first place. It's more expensive for us, but we buy high quality furniture in the first place. We then can move it, 12, 20 times if we need to, and it still stays in one piece. And we can also repaint furniture. We get sofas, for example, reupholstered. We'll mend things because we bought good quality in the first place. So all of that, and we try and work with suppliers. Naturally, we try and work with suppliers who also have very eco-friendly policies, if you like, very sustainable policies, and who openly talk about those, because that's important to our clients. Going back to what you said earlier about if we're going into a home that doesn't look very eco-friendly, if you like, then we have a lot of people, a lot of contractors in our network who can help people. If that's going to be a barrier to the sale, particularly, then they can help the seller, the home seller, actually create a much more eco-friendly home. So people that would do soundproofing, for example, that they would reglaze windows that are that have a very low value for kind of keeping heat in. Heating systems, for example. We have a lot of contractors that we work with that can quote and do all of that work. Often for our clients, that's not something that they spend money on ahead of a sale, but having a plan in place that's quoted can be a real key thing for them to pass on to somebody that's interested in buying, because somebody who's interested in buying a house that isn't very eco-friendly will generally overestimate the cost of putting in insulation, for example, or changing a heating system. So where we've helped the seller is to get quotes for doing that work, which will make the home more eco-friendly. And they can then pass that on to the potential buyer. So the potential buyer has realistic costs rather than just some figure that they'll make up in their head.
That is super cool. I love the way how you have answered this question, because I was really concerned, like, how that's gonna work out. But I'm glad that, you have thought about this and you have people in place who can help you to make things happen, contractors. So I love the fact that you have an entire team who can make this happen. It is super, super cool. I
We
got two
have
more questions, and I just want to open up the floor. So, guys, if you are interested in coming up and be a part of this incredible conversation I'm having with Elaine, feel free to raise your hand and I would be happy to bring you up. Okay, so while you guys are actually, doing hand raising, and while I'm trying to bring you up, my next question to you is that how do you think home staging impacts the overall real estate market? And is there any sort of evidence, probably, or data you have gathered which shows like a ripple effect? Okay, I'm emphasizing ripple effect on neighboring properties because you do staging. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great question, Jason, and I think that we have seen a number of neighborhoods where actually what happens is that if one property on the street is staged before it's sold, it will command a higher price than neighboring properties which haven't been staged. And if all the properties are on the market at the same time, the one that is staged will inevitably sell more quickly than the others. And what we have also done in a number of cases is that we've staged one property on a street. It's sold really quickly. It's sold really well for a very good price. And then what we will find is that the neighbours or the estate agents, the real estate agents selling the other properties in the street will come to us and go, could you help us now? So there is definitely, you're absolutely right, that there is definitely this ripple effect. It becomes a kind of well, they've done it, so we've got to do it. And that's really important in educating and influencing the whole real estate market, because certainly in the UK right now, it's still a bit of a struggle. Agents will say, oh, staging's too expensive for my client, or staging's going to take too long to get this property on the market. Most of them haven't actually asked the client if that's if that's what they want, or if they're prepared to spend some money to make more money back. Most of them haven't bothered asking, but they'll make an assumption that it's too expensive, or it takes too long, or any of those things, which is just utter nonsense. And we get far more people coming to us, far more home sellers now coming to us without an estate agent. So before they've even instructed an agent to say, can you help us? We know that this will help. Can you help us? But our agent won't tell us about it. We're still in that place in the UK, but they might have seen a friend, for example, who's staged, or people have got friends and family in the States or in Australia, where it's a much more normal part of selling a home.
That is incredible. So yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Now, see, I did watch a video, and this is just okay. I watched a video wherein somebody had staged their house, or the property was looking, very cool. Okay, but there were people surrounding the neighborhood who did not keep, the location that clean, tidy, or it was not looking that great. So, so they were damaging this opposite individual's property. They are like, because of you, we would end up paying higher taxes. Our rents would go up. So, what do you think about that? Like, do you think there is a possibility, if you want to probably acquire a property at a cheaper price, do you think people can use it to get the pricing down? And I don't know, can people manipulate using this medium? Like, is that something which is possible? I don't know. I don't even know if this is like a good question.
I think it's interesting. I think that the properties that have problems, for example, I think what I'm understanding from you is that if you've staged a house on a street where the street itself is quite neglected, where there are a lot of people who don't really care, then does the staging make as much difference because you've got all kinds of other problems in the
Yeah.
street?
Yeah, you phrased it even better than me. Yeah. Nikki.
I think that's, and we see the same thing where a property is maybe next to a railway line, for example, or next to a pub, next to something, busy kind of event venue or something like that. You can't change those things about a property, but by the staging, what you can do is to make people feel as though as soon as they walk into that property, so it's in an affordable neighborhood, because actually it's not that great a neighborhood. You can see that by the other properties around. But actually, if you want to be able to, if you want to be able to afford the best house in that neighborhood, you want to be in that area, for example, for all the other things it offers, but actually you want an affordable property, then the one that's been staged will make you think, oh, the minute I walk through this door, I'll feel at home, I can close the door behind me, and I can forget all the stuff that's going on outside. I don't need to worry about the fact that my neighbour hasn't got a tidy garden, that there's that there's a railway running past the back of the house, all of those things. That the staging actually makes somebody feel like, oh, but actually this is the right house for me. So the staging isn't necessarily in that case pushing the price up hugely, but what it is doing is making that property saleable in spite of the things that you can't change around it.
Okay. So let me ask you another question, okay? Would this make any difference if it's a cultural or regional difference?
Okay, so culturally and regionally, there are massive differences in what people expect from their home, really. And so, for example, if you're selling a house in a city, then the colours that you would use are different. Then the expectation of what somebody's buying is different, because they're expecting it to be noisier, for example, than something that's in the middle of the countryside in a village. And those things will make a big difference. So they might want a very kind of urban chic look, for example, in a city property, which absolutely wouldn't work in a 5-bedroom Victorian mansion in the middle of nowhere. So there are regional differences, very significant regional differences. We notice that with our European friends, for example, there are big cultural differences across different countries of what people love in a home. So being aware of that, if you're staging internationally, it's rare at the moment, but if you're staging internationally, or even, we don't do very many city properties. Our real sweet spot, if you like, is big country houses. We understand that, we're really good at that. We can make those feel like somebody's home. I think if you're staging in a particular country for a particular group, then it's really good to become expert in that rather than trying to be everything for everybody. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. And I appreciate you answering that. So let's talk about the myth about staging being expensive. And you said that sometimes people don't even try and they pre-assume that it's an expensive proposition. So how do you think homeowners can balance out the overall cost of staging with a potential increase in the sales price, and what is the return of investment from the home staging process? How do you think we can balance these things out? What advice would you give homeowners?
I think it's really, really, really important for stagers to be talking about the numbers. It's the thing that I bang on about the most. They go, oh, Elaine, she's going to start talking about statistics. She's going to start talking about numbers again. Having said that, I was speaking in New Orleans at a conference in February, and one of the audience said to me, if I've got to listen to somebody talking about data, I'd much rather do it with a British accent, so thank you. So it's one of those kind of things that nobody really wants to hear about or talk about, but stagers absolutely have to get their heads around the numbers, because in explaining to somebody the difference that staging is going to make. It is all about the numbers. That's what's important. We're not doing it for fun. We're not doing it because we like pink cushions. We're doing it because actually it's going to make a difference to the sale. And so being able to explain to somebody that's considering staging, if you spend, let's say, £2,000, for example, then in all likelihood, in this type of property, in this part of the market, you will get back £20,000. This is the evidence. These are the case studies of properties that I've done in the same way. So you're able to evidence those numbers. Often people will see staging as an upfront cost, where they will see a price drop, for example. So the alternative to staging might be a price drop. So a property gets stuck on the market. It's not achieving the price that it's been listed at. And so the real estate agent says, okay, well, we've got to drop the price down into the next price bracket. People don't perceive a price drop as real money in the same way that they perceive a staging cost up front as real money. So sometimes that can be a bit tricky. I mean, we've got all kinds of ways of helping homeowners afford staging without, if they're bought into the idea of being able to actually afford it, because we know that the increase at the other end will be more than worth it. I talk about it very often as being the best investment that somebody's ever going to make, because they're investing a relatively small amount to get a dramatic upturn. So 10, 20, 100 times what they invested in a very, very, very short space of time. So weeks rather than years, for example. So it really is important that we talk about the numbers and that we help homeowners understand the numbers, the difference that the investment's going to make. And I would always talk about staging as an investment, not as a cost.
Yeah, it is an investment, definitely. I would do it after listening to you. Yeah, this is something which you have to do if you are planning to sell a house. And who does not like a nice, clean, tidy, home-like feeling, right? I mean, you would end up buying it, because then you would not have to worry about, making it a home, because you're already getting a home. So I hear you, what you're trying to say. It's time for actually break, guys. So just in case, I know, Annette, you have been listening to this conversation for quite a while. You're welcome to come up and just say hi to Elaine. We would not bite. And even you, Derek and Sandra, I know you guys just joined the conversation. If you want to say hi to Elaine, and we are speaking about home staging on real estate sales. If you want to contribute, share something, feel free. You can also come up just to say hi. And we are also cool with that. So let's do a sponsor shout out. I have my next sponsor, who is Dr. Amanda, and let's hear her out.
Do you want to find out how your neurology works? Do you want to understand why you do what you do? Then it's really simple. Just check out yourlifeloveit.com, and there you'll find lots of different ways for you to be able to learn more about you, why you do the things you do, and more importantly, how to change those in a really quick, effective way. We call it unthinkable change. The change that you'll experience with neural coding is fast and it lasts. Don't wait anymore. You get 86,400 seconds every day. Once it's gone, it's gone. We are committed and passionate about helping people create unthinkable change in their lives. We've been doing this since 2008 and literally changed over 41,000 problems, deleted them from the neurology, and then installed a solution that works best for the client. Whether you want to work one-on-one or take one of our award-winning neural coding online courses, take action today. The costs of not doing that are just more days wasted. So connect with us. We're here to help. We're here to help you create unthinkable change that's fast and it lasts. It's your life. Live it.
All right, so that is Dr. Amanda Fu Rayland, You would be able to find her website, yourlifeliveit.com, under the event comments or the show description, very, very easily. Just in case if you don't know who Dr. Amanda is, first of all, she's an international speaker. She has around 1.9 million views on her TED Talk, has spoken over 14 countries. She's also been a keynote speaker for over 36 years and has impacted around 3.5 million lives, and is also a #1 best-selling author. Okay, I like what she's doing with neural coding. I would encourage you to check her website out, check her work out, take advantage of it. I think she's really cool, and I really admire the things, which she does through her recoding process. So that's Dr. Amanda. Shout out to her. Thank you so much for being a sponsor on my show. And so no, back to Q&A. So let's actually start Q&A. So Leslie, you're the only lucky individual who was willing to come up. So thank you for being here. And Elaine, I want to let you know that Leslie is the one who I am going to be interviewing next week. We're going to come up with something really cool and interesting, for sure. I'm going to be having like a discovery call with her tonight. So Leslie, do you have a question or a comment? I know you like you are into real estate and you like real estate a lot. So let's hear from you.
Yes. Yeah, hopefully you don't hear the clip clop. I'm literally hacking out on my horse, enjoying myself on the East Coast. My mother was a realtor and broker, and first time I heard about staging was probably in the mid '80s when she got involved with staging homes, and it's quite fascinating, just all that you have presented to us today. And my quick question is, your sensory modes, your vision, your hearing, you're checking everything out. Do you get involved with having like fresh baked cookies sitting there, so when people walk in, I know especially here in the US, I equate those smell of the chocolate chip cookies to my childhood memories and bringing me back home. So I was curious if that's something that you do, these extra touches when you do have people coming into the homes to be a potential buyer.
I think that's a great question, Leslie. And I think that, and the answer is yes and no. So one of the things that massively differs in a UK market to in the US and in fact in the Australian market is that the concept of an open house, of when you're getting a whole lot of buyers coming on the same day, is still relatively rare. And so the ability to be doing fresh baked cookies or fresh baked bread on a particular day as part of the staging process is far, far less. It's much more normal for us at the moment for a property to go onto the market, and the viewings are kind of drip feed, if you like. So you might have one today and you might have one next week and you might have one the week after that. They don't group viewings in quite the same way. So how do we get around that so that a house smells nice? Well, first of all, one of the big impacts of staging is to make the house smell of nothing. First of all, that's always a really good thing. I have a real thing about smell, and you walk into a house and the carpets smell. You can smell if somebody quite elderly has been living there through a period of illness, for example, because the carpet has a very particular smell. You can smell if people have got pets, because that carpet picks up the smell of dogs or cats or whatever it is. And so first of all, we would make sure that the house doesn't smell of grotty carpet. And at worst, we would actually throw the carpet out and start again, so that the house has a kind of a neutral smell is always a really good start. And then in order to bring in smells that people like or that evoke a particular memory, as you've just described with chocolate chip cookies evoking childhood, and you've just made me hungry already because it's dinner time here in the UK, so I'm starving. I think what we would do, generally we would have to do that by using diffusers, for example, or having scented candles around, obviously not lit, but the type that you can actually smell without them being lit. And we would put those into different rooms so that as somebody's walking through, they're getting an overall really lovely smell. Having said that, one of my stories is that we did exactly that. We put some very nice, quite expensive reed diffusers into a new build property we'd done, and it was the first time we'd done any work for this particular developer. And when we went back to collect the furniture, we found all the diffusers outside, and we called him and we said, why have you put the diffusers outside? I said, oh, I bloody hate the smell of those things. It just really, he was one of these people that absolutely hated any kind of smell that wasn't a completely natural smell in the house, and he just chucked them all out. So we have been a little bit, you do have to pick your smells, I think, a little bit. Does that answer what you're asking, Leslie? So I think
I love that.
The way that we market property, it challenges the baking concept, really, to some extent. We teach sellers to do it sometimes, or talk to sellers about doing it sometimes too.
That's interesting. And Jason, if I may, but I know
you can ask as
keep
many
moving.
questions as you want, because we don't have anybody else.
I will ask just another quick question. So Elaine, I'd love to know, I'm very amused, and I love the $1 million listing, LA, New York. And through when everything was shut down, they had to be creative, and they had like this robotic apparatus going around where you could view and navigate this robot to see the rooms, but it kept banging into walls. It would back up and then fall to the side. I was just curious, how creative did you have to be when everything was somewhat on lockdown and you couldn't physically go into these areas? And maybe you did mention that because I was breaking up when I was driving out to the farm. So I was just curious with what experience you had with that.
Again, that's a great question, Leslie, because of course, like in most businesses, most industries, we had to get much more creative. And how you stage a property and how you help somebody to view a property when actually you physically can't go out of your own house was a really, really challenging time. And we worked with real estate agents. Again, it's really changed. That whole time has massively changed the way that we now do business as well. And I think there are very few estate agents in the UK right now who wouldn't at least consider doing videos, because that's relatively recent. Video wasn't a common thing. So we'd do a walkthrough video when they're bringing the property to market. And the lack of those really showed up during lockdowns, because people couldn't view the property online at all. All they'd got was a set of photographs. I think what you're describing is like a Matterport tour, for example, where they use a camera and just take photographs all the way around the house, almost a kind of a robotic thing, and then they're all stitched together in a particular way. And when you navigate those on your screen, and I'm hopeless at it, when you navigate those on your screen, you find yourself banging into walls, you find yourself going over the ceiling. It's absolutely hideous. I still haven't got really good at those, although we used them a lot. And they became really important. We were virtually staging, so getting CGI imagery combined with interior design done for properties that were coming onto the market far, far more. Normally, in normal times, we would use those predominantly for properties that haven't yet been built to showcase what they're going to look like. But we were using all of that technology through the lockdowns to showcase properties that were built, that people were living in, so that people could envisage how they would be able to live in the property without actually going to view. And personally, as a business, we got extremely good at doing consultations on WhatsApp video calls in particular. So we can, and we still use that now. So we work nationally, and geographically, that gives us some challenges sometimes, just in terms of time, really, to get to a property. And we will often do a first look through a property, a first consultation with a seller on a WhatsApp video call. So I can walk through, pretty much any property with the seller. and look at the clutter that they've got stashed in a corner and go, oh my God, you can't possibly sell it looking like that. What's that pile of rubbish in the corner there? And often they'll go, oh, I didn't mean to show you that. And I'm going, no, but we can still see it. And that's really important because your viewers will see it as well. We've got to get rid of it. So we got very good at using that technology and still use all of those things now on a very, very regular basis.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. In my former career, I used to be residential and commercial design, doing hand elevations and then going to AutoCAD. But and just something popped in, and if you don't have time, that's fine. I was just thinking, as the creative one, always thinking out of the box. What was your most challenging project staging a home, or maybe not a home?
I was just talking to Jason about this before we came on and saying, can I tell this story? He said, yeah, you can say anything on my podcast, go for it. So I think we are relatively unusual in the staging community in that we work with both occupied, so secondhand properties, lived-in properties, and vacant properties. And we did a home, it must be about 5-6 years ago now, maybe, that had been lived in by a family, and they moved out because they'd relocated. The parents had relocated for work, so the whole family moved. But what happened was that they decided that they didn't really like a lot of their stuff, and they couldn't really be bothered to tidy up at all. So they just left everything, and literally left everything. And it was just kind of on the floor. We walked in and we were stepping over dirty knickers on the floor, just dirty washing. It was just horrible. And so we quoted them and they said, yes, please, we just need help. We can't be bothered to do it ourselves. You'll have to come and help us, which we did. Sent in my team, and I was sitting back in the office. And one of my team, who's very experienced, she's very calm, she's very good generally. And she phoned me and she said, oh my God, Elaine, she said, I have no idea what to do. And I'm going, what's the matter, Linda? And she said, we're in the main bedroom and everywhere you look, there are sex toys on the floor. They're under the covers on the bed. They're in the drawers. They're everywhere. What are we supposed to do with all this stuff? And of course, I just burst out laughing because to hear her in such distress about something was so unusual. And she was just so funny. And so I said, well, look, you've got your marigolds, your rubber gloves. Go and put your rubber gloves on, get a box and just pile them all in, label the box, close the box, do what you've done with everything else, label the box and put it in the garage. But just label it bedroom toys or something that doesn't give doesn't give everybody the heebie-jeebies when they go round. Just get rid of it, which they did. But it was just that kind of horror that somebody would walk out of their home and just leave this stuff, knowing that we were coming in to get cleared up, just knowing that was going to happen. So that was probably the worst, Leslie.
Thank you, Elaine. That was really interesting.
Thank you so much for sharing the funny story.
You do see some sights. I mean, you really do see some sights. We see some beautiful homes. We're very, very privileged. And we see some absolutely shocking. We saw one that a family of with 4 children was still living in, and the roof had clearly leaked some years ago, and half the plaster was off on one of the bedroom walls. And I don't think they'd even really noticed, to be honest. The whole house was such a state. It's the only house where I've actually said to the family, we are not touching this until you have moved out. You move out and then we'll sort the house out for you. And they had to move in with family, with their parents, in fact, for about 6 weeks while we got in plasterers, decorators, we got new carpets done, we took in new furniture, just a whole lot, because it was awful, really, really, truly awful. But it's the only one where I've ever actually had to throw out the family that lived there in order to get the work done. And they'd been on the market for a year before we got involved, with nobody making any kind of sensible offer, and they'd sold it. I more or less sold it off the street on that one, actually. I had somebody came past and said, oh, this is a great house on a great road. And we'd more or less done it by then and showed this guy around, who then contacted the estate agent and bought it. So it was, I mean, that was a great story for us, a great kind of turnaround.
Lovely. All right, so it's time for, actually, let's do rapid fire questions. Let me bring that sound effect. Okay, so sorry in case if it was too loud, but okay, let's do that. Some rapid fire questions. We want to know the fun side of you. So questions to you, and I have one common question for everyone, including you and Leslie. So first question to you: have you ever staged a property that you wanted to personally move in and live by yourself?
Live by myself. God, that's my dream. I've got 4 children. I've got 3 horses. I've got dogs. I've got God only knows what. My partner, just having a house where I could move into for half an hour by myself would be quite nice. It'd be really quiet, wouldn't it? With nobody wanting food or anything else. So, but to live with the family, probably we've done some. I'm very lucky because I actually have a beautiful house, and I very, very rarely have house envy of houses that we stage for work. We did one that was the most beautiful period home a few years ago, and that one was a real wrench to leave. It needed quite a lot of work, but I love doing work on houses. I've done a lot of that, and it was a real wrench, but it just had the most gorgeous proportions, kind of mini stately home, if you like, and it was beautiful. And that one I came away from thinking, I could have lived there, I could have moved there. But mostly I'm very lucky. I don't get huge house envy, which I think would make this job very difficult if I did.
Well, I'm glad you don't have envy, and I'm glad that you have such an incredible house and your family. So that is super, super cool. So have you ever staged a house, Elaine, that was haunted or had some sort of paranormal activity going on?
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because nobody ever asked that, but it is really interesting because my mother and my grandmother would both tell you that they were extremely sensitive to kind of paranormal activity, and I've always gone, poo, just get on with it. And we didn't stage it in the end, thank heavens, but I went to a property that had previously been a chapel and was struggling to sell. And the upstairs was the main living space. So you went up the steps out of the car park, off the drive, up the steps. And there was a beautiful, huge kitchen, really big living space, a couple of bedrooms off that. And then the majority of the bedrooms were down this little spiral staircase. And I stood at this top of this spiral staircase, and honestly, I swear to God that there were people walking around downstairs, and I absolutely could not go downstairs in this property. And that's just not me. Normally, I would just kind of dismiss all of that, but I could not walk down the spiral staircase in this property to go and see the rooms that were downstairs. I left. And I just quoted, assuming that there were another 3 bedrooms downstairs, because that's what the agent had told me. It was horrible. It was just weird. Oh, have I lost you?
No, we can hear you.
Yeah. So that was really weird. That was horrible. That was my kind of paranormal thing, if you like.
Yeah, I'm glad nothing happened to you.
Yeah, and I think because it was an old chapel and it was still, it's still got all the stained glass in it and everything, it was just a bit, I couldn't do it. I have to be able to see out. It was really, it did really bother me, that one, for a very long time afterwards.
All right. I want to ask you something about sailing. So, based on your sailing experience and skill set which you have gathered over the course of years, have you used any of your sailing skills or experience to escape any sort of dangerous or awkward situation on land?
I'll tell you a story from my youth, okay?
Okay.
When I was skippering a yacht out of Falmouth, so down in Cornwall, in the UK. So beautiful part of the world, beautiful, beautiful area to sail. And I was skippering down there, teaching people to sail. And this one particular week, because people generally came on a Sunday evening and they stayed until Friday, and then they went home, and then I got a new crew to teach on the Sunday. And I had a group of people who were all friends. They'd come down from London, a couple of guys and a couple of women who weren't related. They were just friends, and they came down, and we had a great week. I taught them to sail. We had really good wind all week. It was, it was quite breezy. We would sail all day, go to nice restaurants in the evening, and then, pick up and go to the next port. We weren't sailing overnight. So it was a lovely, lovely experience. And when we got decent weather, it was amazing. And these people learned a huge amount. They came as virtually non-sailors, learned a huge amount, and went off back to their homes in London. Okay, so that was all absolutely fine. And I lived on my boat at that stage, and I used to moor the boat just off the town in Falmouth. And generally on a Sunday morning, and so a couple of weeks after this particular group had gone, I'd moored my boat up, and I was waiting for my next crew to come, but I thought I'll row ashore and I'll have a shower, because the decent showers were on land. We'd got a kind of a very makeshift thing on the boat, but it wasn't great. So I thought, right, I'll row ashore, I'll have a proper shower, wash my hair, do all of that, just be really good. And I hopped into my rubber dinghy and rowed ashore, as I did, and I got
What was
my
it?
wash
Hop.
bag. Yeah. got my wash bag. I'm in my pajama trousers and my sweatshirt over the top, because there was no point getting dressed if I was only going to get into the shower. And that's very normal in marinas. That is normal behaviour in marinas. And as I got ashore, one of the guys from the previous week was standing on the quay, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm really glad that you've come ashore. I was just trying to work out how to get out to your boat." And I'm going, "Blimey, why?" And he proceeded to give me this long spiel. "I fell in love with you while we were on the boat, and I absolutely got home and decided that I couldn't carry on going out with my girlfriend. So I've just finished with my girlfriend, and I've come back to ask you if you will marry me." I mean, I've still got my pajamas on. I haven't had a shower yet, and I'm like looking at it, go, where you go, "Oh, fuck. What do I say now?" I go, "I've forgotten something." Hopped back into my dinghy, rowed like fury back to the boat, got on, started the engine, and headed off out of the harbour. There was just no way I could deal with this weird conversation. So I started off on the boat. I got ashore. That was all a bit complicated, so I just got back in the boat and fled, basically.
So that was an escape moment for you.
How weird is that? Somebody just decides that they've fallen in love with you, so they've given up their life and they've come back to see if you feel the same about it. I mean, weird.
Oh, shit happens. So
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, in another life I'd be flattered. I'd be very flattered now, but it's not going to happen now. But it was quite funny.
yeah, it is.
Poor
It
guy.
is definitely funny. I appreciate you
Poor guy.
sharing that. That was really hilarious. So I have a common question for everyone, including you and Leslie. So let's start with Leslie. So Leslie, if you could stage any room in your house as a theme, what would you do and why?
Okay, so if I could stage any room in my house, well, I'm going to get silly here. Having a lot of testosterone in my house, I am the only woman of 3 boys and my husband. They seem to they use the bathroom as an office space too, where I can never get them out of the bathroom. They bring the newspaper in, their laptop. So I would do a multi-purpose office / bathroom or loo or for my kids and my husband. How's that?
I love that, Leslie. I love that.
How would Elaine? How would
I,
you go about staging this situation? Like, if you have to help Leslie out, what would be your professional guidance?
I was actually just thinking, I have a very big bathroom in my house, because it was either going to be a tiny bathroom and a tiny bedroom, which is what it was when I bought the house. And so we took the wall down between to make a huge bathroom. So actually, Leslie, I have the perfect space at home for exactly what you're talking about, because I could very easily, just in front of the bath, put a big desk and one of those, kind of really nice big armchairs for them to use as their kind of desk space with a laptop and so on. I think we could put one of those, those tray things that you can sit across the bath, and actually you could put the laptop on there so that they could lie in the bath and still be on a laptop. I think it would be really good. And I've got space to put some big comfy armchairs in the bathroom where they could just sit and read or watch films or whatever it is. So I have the perfect space for you, Leslie. Come over.
I love it. Multi-purpose, multifunctional. I think a house would sell if a husband would walk in and see that. All of a sudden, you'd see euphoria.
Do you know, I think I might have to use that in my next staging. I think that's a great idea.
All right. So we're on the last stage of our interview session. So I want to give Elaine the opportunity to promote her business. So Elaine, do you have any sort of speaking engagements or events or promotions, anything you like to promote on my show? Oh, you know what I remember about the app which you were speaking about, Stage Flow, I think that's the name. So
Yes.
why don't you speak about the app? And I think that's going to serve a lot of people. It's going to help a lot of people.
So the app, which is called Stage Flow, sets out to evidence the return on investment for staging. It's useful to stagers in as much as stagers can use it as a very comprehensive marketing tool, because it gives reports. You put in your own data, and then it will collate that with data from other stagers in different regions, different parts of the world, or you can just use your own. You can just to show, it collates that into reports to show how much more quickly a staged property will sell, how much more money a staged property will achieve beyond something that's not staged. So it does all of that within the app. So it's really useful as a marketing tool for stagers. We are currently trying to encourage real estate agents to get it hooked up to their CRM systems, so that when they're talking to sellers about staging, then they can actually show the evidence to their sellers about how well staging works and about the return on investment. That's still a bit of a challenge. There are a lot of real estate agents who aren't up for that at the moment. So we're looking really for CRM developers that provide to the real estate industry that want to work with us. So that's where we're at with that. But it's a very good subscription tool. We're doing currently we have various offers running for cost for a subscription for stagers in particular to use the tool to evidence the return on investment, so they can market more effectively through the kind of the head stuff rather than just the heart stuff of beautiful pictures.
Okay. So my next question is this only for real estate agents, or as a consumer, can I take advantage of it?
Well, at the moment, they're probably, it's a subscription app, so you can't really access it as a home seller, which is exactly why we want to get it tied in with the estate agents, because then a homeowner can say to an agent, tell me the difference that it makes. So that's what we're looking for at the moment. It's interesting, actually. I think there are a lot of markets. We're very new to this, relatively speaking, and it needs, it needs more and more people to be asking questions about it and to be getting involved with it for us to do the development for the next stages. So I'm really interested in anybody that's interested in the app just having a conversation with me.
Yeah, it doesn't look expensive. Also, I think £10 for the inside package and £50 per month for the professional package. What would be a key difference between both of these packages? Why would one opt for the smaller one in comparison to the bigger one?
So the insights package is for real estate agents, essentially, to be able to view the data, but they're not actually necessarily inputting any data into it. The £50 package is for people for stagers really, who are putting in multiple projects and want to be able to generate more and more data and also filter it for their own data and for regions and so on, so that they're actually inputting as well as viewing the data. And we have constantly partnerships going on with the European Staging Association and also the Homestaging Association in the UK, where we have deals on all the prices for those as well. So if anybody, if there are stagers out there who are interested, please get in touch, because we will give you absolutely the best deal on those packages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this would be relevant not for consumers, but somebody who is into the real estate game. And I think this can help you to level up. So I have mentioned the Stageflow app details under the event comments. You should be also able to find it under the event description if you're listening to the recorded version on Spotify, Apple, or other platforms. Elaine, before we wrap up this conversation, if there's one thing you want people to take away from this conversation, what would that be?
We were talking about this just before I came on, Jason, and there are two things which kind of combine overall in one thing. I think it's really important as an entrepreneur, as somebody in business, to understand the link up, if you like, between home life and working life. So my legacy in my working life, I would want to be that I was the one who brought a real focus on the numbers into essentially a creative industry and got people to focus on investment, on why people would do it from a cost point of view and an investment point of view, and brought that credibility, if you like, into the home staging industry. The thing that I'm proudest of in my life really is that I have 4 grown-up children, all of whom I really like. And I think that there's not every parent who can say that as their children get older. They are really, really sane, sorted people, and I rely on them very heavily to bounce off a lot of business. They're all in business themselves, with the exception of my youngest, who's just finishing uni. So the other 3 are all in business themselves, and we bounce a lot of business around, and I am super, super proud of that.
That is incredible, Elaine. It's so lovely to have you present with us today. And 90 minutes, I don't know how it passed away. It was so much fun, so much insightful, and such an incredible person to speak with, and just to learn and just process and just to understand things. And I think you have figured out the whole home staging process from the way I gauge you, during this conversation. I think you know it all, and I think you are a true expert and a master in this. So I want to first of all thank you once again for, we had a very short notice. I had a guest cancellation in between, and I was looking for somebody really cool, and I spoke to you. We had a phone call. You made it very easy. As a guest, I find you an incredible guest. I would love to have you on my show again, speak about more different topics about entrepreneurship and even, something to do with real estate. I would love to have you again. I think this was super, super cool.
It's absolutely been my pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. It's been, I looked at 90 minutes and I thought, wow, that's a really long time. But exactly as you've just said, it's gone so quickly. It's been lovely to talk to you. So thank you for that. And thank the audience as well for input, especially Leslie for the great questions. Really appreciate that. It makes it so much easier as a guest. Thank you.
That is super cool. I also want to thank all the listeners who stuck around till the end of our session. So Annette, special thanks to you because you were there from the beginning of the show. Derek, although you joined late, I know you have been following my show for quite some time. Thank you so much for your love and support. And Sandra, this is the first time I'm seeing you, so welcome to my podcast. This is like a podcast we do every week. So next week's show, I've not decided on a theme or a concept yet, but the person whom you see next to me, Leslie Dowling, okay, she is a super cool friend, okay, a highly educated person from the functional space, and she has a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share, and she's going to be a TEDx speaker very soon, guys. We are working on these beautiful things. So I don't know what I'm going to be speaking on or what she would be speaking on. We'll figure it out, but I would have it listed under my profile under the featured section or on this event page in the next couple of days time. So do not worry. Next Wednesday I'll see you all at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank each and everybody for listening in, even the people who are listening to the recording. You take care of yourself wherever you are in the world. Have an amazing day.